Imagine a ritual so ancient it predates every empire known to man. A journey not invented by modern religions or kings, but commanded by the Creator himself. Imagine millions of people from every nation speaking every language, all dressed alike, walking in perfect harmony, reenacting the footsteps of a single man, his wife, and their son. Not for fame, not for show, but for obedience to the Lord of the worlds. What if I told you that the first pilgrimage, the very first Hajj, was not performed in the time of Prophet Muhammad, but thousands of years before him, by a prophet whose legacy lives on in every stone, every step, every drop of Zamzam? And what if I told you modern science has uncovered stunning facts about this pilgrimage, about this location, and even about the rituals that we once thought were only spiritual, but now even science confirms their power and purpose? Stay with me as we uncover the breathtaking story of who truly performed the first Hajj, how each ritual is rooted in history, and what scientists discovered in the Quran that will not just shock you, but awaken your iman and make you proud of the legacy you belong to. This is not just a speech, it is a journey back to the origins of divine worship. Let's begin. The very first Hajj in its foundational form was performed by Prophet Ibrahim, AS, after he rebuilt the Kaaba with his son Ismail, AS is commanded by Allah, in a style inspired by Dr. Zakir Naik. Logical, Quran-friendly and powerful. So when we ask the question, who performed the first Hajj? Most people will assume it was someone during the time of Islam, or perhaps even Prophet Muhammad himself. But the Quran gives us a different answer, a clearer and much earlier one. The first recorded performance of Hajj in its spiritual and foundational form was done by Prophet Ibrahim, ESP, known in Christianity as Abraham and in Judaism as Avram, as Absaram. Here, not only is this recorded in the Quran, but it is also echoed in the Bible, though with deviations. But what's striking is how the Quran gives details that science, history, and logic now affirm in a way that leaves even non-Muslim historians speechless. Let us first understand the context. The Kaaba, the sacred cube-shaped structure located in the heart of Makkah, is not a symbol of Islam alone. It is not a building that was introduced 1400 years ago. According to Surah Al-Baqarah 2:12-5, 127. And when we made the house a place of return for the people and pray, security, and take, O believers, from the standing place of Ibrahim, a place of prayer. And we charged Ibrahim and Ismail, saying, purify my house for those who perform tawaf and those who stay for worship and those who bow and prostrate for worship and those who bow and prostrate to 12:5. This verse is crystal clear. Allah is addressing Ibrahim, Isam, and his son Ismail, commanding them to purify the house of Allah, meaning the Kaaba, and make it a center for worship. They were not only builders of the Kaaba, but also the first pilgrims, the first ones to perform tawaf, the ritual of circumambulating the Kaaba, the first ones to stand on that sacred ground and submit fully to Allah's command. So when did this happen? Historically, Prophet Ibrahim, AS, lived approximately 2000 years before the Prophet Muhammad. This means that the core rituals of Hajj, as practiced today by over 2 million people annually, are rooted in a tradition that is over 4,000 years old. Now, how can we claim this with confidence? Because the Quran doesn't just make vague spiritual statements, it gives specific instructions, geographical references, and linguistic precision that no human being at the time could have foreseen. Let's look further. In Surah Al-Hajj 22:26-27, Allah says, and mention of Muhammad when we designated for Ibrahim the side of the house, saying, do not associate anything with me and purify my house for those who perform tawaf and those who stand and those who bow and prostrate. and proclaim to the people the Hajj. They will come to you on foot and on every lean camel. They will come from every distant pass. Now pause here. The command from Allah is to proclaim the Hajj, but to whom? Ibrahim was in the desert, in a barren valley. There was no internet, no television, no printing press. How could this call reach the people? It's a miracle, a divine amplification. And yet today, 4,000 years later, the world's largest human gathering is this very Hajj. Muslims from every continent, every skin color, every language respond to that ancient call. Isn't this a prophecy fulfilled? The Quran was not written yesterday. It has been preserved since the time of its revelation. Yet it speaks of a universal Hajj, declared by a prophet in the desert, followed by billions of people over millennia. Let us now examine the historical and physical act of Hajj that Ibrahim performed. According to narrations, Allah tested Ibrahim in multiple ways. One of the greatest being when he left his wife Hajar and son Ismail in a barren desert valley. There was no water, no crops, no people. It was a trial. Hajar, in her desperate search for water, ran between two hills, Safa and Marwa, which today are sacred sites for pilgrims. When Allah blessed them with the spring of Zamzam, the settlement of Makkah began. Years later, Ibrahim Rab returned and was commanded to build the Kaaba with his son Ismail. They lifted the foundations of the house, and while doing so, they made a heartfelt prayer, recorded in Surah Al-Baqarah 2:12-7. And Ibrahim was raising the foundations of the house, and Bismillah while male, Ismail, our Lord, accept this from us. Indeed, you are the hearing, the knowing. This verse is extremely powerful. It tells us that the building of the Kaaba was not simply architecture. It was ibadah, worship, infused with humility and sincerity. And it's at this point that Allah instructs Ibrahim to proclaim Hajj. The scholars of Tafsir explain that the rituals of Hajj, Tawit, standing at Arafah, stoning the devil, and sacrifice, all stem from the actions or experiences of Ibrahim, Ismail, and Hajar, Ismail. This is why Hajj is sometimes called the legacy of Ibrahim. Now here is something remarkable that modern scientists and historians have found deeply fascinating. The Zamzam well, which sprang forth under the feet of Ismail A.S. according to Islamic tradition, is over 4,000 years old and still flowing. Scientists have tested its water and found it has a unique chemical composition with no bacteria, no growth of algae, and balanced mineral content. In fact, the German scientist Dr. Knut Pfeiffer said, Zamzam water has an energy that's not found in any other water on earth. It is the only natural water source that supplies millions of pilgrims every year without ever drying up. How can a small spring in the middle of a hot desert survive thousands of years while being tapped constantly? This is not just water, this is a living miracle, a sign directly linked to the first Hajj. Moreover, the structure of the Kaaba itself, rebuilt by Ibrahim, has fascinated researchers. It is aligned with specific astronomical coordinates, facing exactly the direction of true geographic north, as well as being the focal point of the Qibla. Satellite imaging has confirmed that the Kaaba is nearly in the center of the Earth's landmass. How could a man 4,000 years ago place a building with such precision? The answer, he didn't. Allah guided him. Further evidence lies in ancient biblical texts that speak about Abraham's journey to the valley of Baca. In the book of Psalms 84:6, it is mentioned, as they pass through the valley of Baca, they make it a place of springs. Now compare that to Surah Al-Imran 3:96. Indeed, the first house of worship established for mankind was that at Baca, blessed and a guidance for the worlds. Baca is simply another name for Makkah. Both scriptures referred to the same place, though over time the biblical text was altered, whereas the Quran preserved it precisely. Scholars now agree Baca is Makkah, and the reference to springs is none other than Zamzam. This shows that the first Hajj was not only a spiritual act, but also a geographically and scientifically verifiable event, carried out by Ibrahim. He did not just pray, he built. He did not just submit, he acted. And Allah honored that action by making it a pillar of Islam, binding all Muslims to the legacy of monotheism, sacrifice, and divine obedience. Even the ritual of animal sacrifice, performed during Hajj, traces back to Ibrahim, Asisa, who sacrificed his son, and both father and son submitted. Allah replaced the son with a ram. That moment, that level of submission, is now remembered by millions of Muslims annually, who sacrifice animals not out of ritual alone but out of devotion, just as Ibrahim Asisa did. Every year during Eid al-Adha, the memory of the first Hajj is honored through sacrifice, unity, and the remembrance of Allah. In light of all this, it becomes clear that the first Hajj was not a new ritual introduced in Islam. It was a revival, a continuation of the monotheistic path established by Ibrahim. Muhammad himself said, "Perform Hajj as you have seen me perform it." But he also referred to Ibrahim as our father. Therefore, the rituals he performed were not innovations, they were restorations of Ibrahim's Hajj, purified from corruption and polytheism that crept in over time. Thus, Prophet Ibrahim was not just the builder of the Kaaba. He was the first pilgrim, the first muwahhid, monotheist, to walk around the Kaaba in full submission, performing Hajj for the sake of Allah alone. His legacy lives on, not just in scripture, but in every act of Hajj, every drop of Zamzam, every step between Safa and Marwa, and every stone cast at the devil. It all traces back to that one man's obedience. The rituals of Hajj are not arbitrary acts or symbolic gestures introduced in the later part of religious history. Rather, they are deeply rooted in the life, actions, and trials of Prophet Ibrahim, A.S., his wife Hajar, A.S., and their son Ismail, A.S. Each step, each motion, each ritual performed during Hajjs is a living reenactment of moments of profound faith, sacrifice, struggle, and surrender that occurred thousands of years ago. When Muslims perform Hajj today, they are not merely visiting a sacred site or completing a religious duty. They are walking through a divine narrative, a timeless legacy that began with a man chosen by Allah to be the father of nations and the symbol of unshakable belief. The ritual of Tawaf, the act of circumambulating the Kaaba 7 times in an anti-clockwise direction, finds its origin in the first acts of worship at the house of Allah. After Prophet Ibrahim, A.S., and his son Ismail completed the rebuilding of the Kaaba, they engaged in worship and praise, submitting to the will of Allah with full humility. This circular movement, revolving around the Kaaba, is not a mere physical act. It is a symbol of how every believer's life must revolve around the one true God. Just as celestial bodies revolve around a center in precise orbits, so too does the believer revolve around the spiritual center of Islam. And it was Prophet Ibrahim who first established this motion in worship, setting the standard for generations to come. The act of Sa'i, running between the hills of Safa and Marwa, is perhaps one of the most powerful and emotionally charged rituals in all of Hajj. It commemorates the desperate search for water by Hajar, the wife of Ibrahim, A.S., as she ran back and forth between these two hills, seeking sustenance for her infant son, Ismail, in the barren desert of Makkah. Her act was not just maternal instinct, it was an act of absolute reliance on Allah. With no one in sight, no apparent resources, and no knowledge of where help would come from, she turned to action while placing her complete trust in Allah's mercy. Allah honored this act so much that it became a permanent ritual for all believers who perform Hajj and Umrah. Every man and woman who perform Sa'i is not just remembering Hajjah, they are embodying her faith, her struggle, and her perseverance. What began as the desperate journey of a mother has become a global ritual repeated by millions each year, proving the power of one believer's sincere effort in the eyes of Allah. And it is through this moment that another miracle took place, the emergence of the Zamzam spring. As Hajar Ace ran between the hills, Allah caused water to gush forth from the ground where baby Ismail was kicking his heels. This water, now known as Zamzam, has flowed for over 4,000 years and is consumed by millions of pilgrims every year. It is not merely water, it is divine provision. Scientific analysis has shown Zamzam to be free from harmful bacteria, rich in beneficial minerals, and never subject to decay, despite the heavy demand placed upon it. It stands as a living miracle, directly linked to the narrative of Hajj and the people who began it. And who were they? Not a wealthy king or a powerful army, but a woman and her child, honored by Allah and made eternal through the rituals of Hajj. Moving further into the Hajj journey, we come to the plains of Arafat, the site where the pilgrim stands in reflection and prayer, seeking the mercy and forgiveness of Allah. This station is linked to the complete submission of Prophet Ibrahim, who, when commanded by Allah to sacrifice his son, did not question or hesitate. This moment, when Ibrahim saw in a dream that he must sacrifice Ismail, was not symbolic. Dreams of the prophets are a form of revelation. Ibrahim had understood the command. What is remarkable is that he conveyed this vision to his son, and the response of young Ismail was one of complete obedience. He said, "O my father, do what you are commanded. You will find me, if Allah wills, of the steadfast." This was not the submission of a father alone, but of an entire family, united in their love for and obedience to Allah. As Ibrahim, ASL, prepared to carry out the command, Allah replaced Ismail with a ram, signifying that the test was passed and the faith proven. This event is commemorated during the Hajj with the ritual of animal sacrifice, Qurbani, where pilgrims sacrifice a goat, sheep, cow, or camel in remembrance of that act of total surrender. This sacrifice is not merely a tradition, it represents the willingness of the believer to give up everything for the sake of Allah. Desires, comforts, attachments, all must be surrendered if Allah commands. It is a reminder that Islam is not a religion of blind rituals, but of meaningful submission. And this meaning originates from the life of Ibrahim. Another powerful ritual is the stoning of the Jammarat, the three pillars representing Shaitan. This act commemorates the moment when Shaitan tried to dissuade Ibrahim at three different points from carrying out Allah's command to sacrifice his son. Each time, Ibrahim responded by throwing stones at him, rejecting his whispers and reinforcing his obedience to Allah. When pilgrims today throw stones at the Jamarat, they are not throwing pebbles at a pillar. They are symbolically rejecting the temptations and distractions of life. They are standing where Ibrahim once stood, doing what he once did, rejecting Shaitan's call and affirming their loyalty to Allah. What is striking in all of this is how every major ritual in Hajj, from the sa'i to the sacrifice to the stoning to the tawaf, is not only rooted in the actions of Ibrahim and Ismail but mirrors their exact decision steps and trials. Hajj, therefore, is not a new religious innovation. It is the preservation and continuation of the original monotheistic worship that Prophet Ibrahim, a sage, said. It is the practical embodiment of his message and the revival of the Abrahamic path, the path of pure Tawheed. In fact, even the Talbiyah, the phrase pilgrims chant during Hajj, reflects this legacy. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, here I am, O Allah, here I am. Echoes the response of Ibrahim, when he received the command to proclaim the Hajj. Though he stood in a barren desert, Allah told him to call the people to pilgrimage, and he did so without question. Allah caused that call to echo across centuries. Today, millions repeat the same words in answer to that same call. The Talbiyah is not a chant from the lips, it is a cry from the heart, a pledge of allegiance to the same God that Ibrahim worshipped. Modern historical and anthropological studies have confirmed that the Hajj rituals predate Islam in its final form. Archaeological evidence, combined with oral traditions and textual records, show that various tribes in the Arabian Peninsula, even in their misguided forms of worship, preserved elements of these Abrahamic rituals. Over time, They were corrupted with idolatry and innovation. It was Prophet Muhammad who came to cleanse and restore them, returning the rituals of Hajj to their original, pure form, the form practiced by Ibrahim, AS, and his family. This restoration is important. It means that Hajj is not a symbol of one nation or time. It is a timeless act, an ancient spiritual journey that unites the Ummah across race, language, and geography. Whether the pilgrim is from Indonesia, Nigeria, Canada, or Egypt, they all perform the same acts in the same place, wearing the same clothes, saying the same words, walking the same footsteps of the same prophet, Ibrahim. What science and history now recognize is that these rituals are not isolated traditions but embedded in a framework of divine purpose. The scientific study of crowd movement, for example, has shown that the circular motion of tawaf creates a harmonious flow that minimizes collision. The Sa'i structure between Safa and Marwa is engineered for safety but still retains the original path. The sacrifices carried out are distributed worldwide to feed the needy, making the act not only spiritual but humanitarian. But at the core of it all lies the story of one man and his family. Ibrahim is the Khalil of Allah, the friend of God, became the foundation of Hajj not through position or power, but through his unwavering submission. Hajar was elevated not through wealth or lineage, but through her faith and determination. Ismail, his sire, earned honor not through status, but through obedience. These are the figures whose lives are preserved in stone, water, and ritual, and their legacy continues to be revived with every Hajj as Muslims from every corner of the earth follow their footsteps in faith, sacrifice, and surrender. In light of everything we've explored, from the origins of the Kaaba to the rituals of Hajj, deeply rooted in the life of Prophet Ibrahim, AS's wife Hajar, and their son Ismail, ASS, it becomes undeniably clear that Hajj is not merely a journey of physical movement, but a journey of the soul, a revival of divine history. Every step taken during Hajj is a reenactment of trials that were passed with flying colors by the greatest models of faith and submission. So the say is not just a run, it is Hajar's hope. The sacrifice is not just the slaughter of an animal, it is Abraham's surrender. The stoning of the pillars is not just a ritual, it is a believer's rejection of Shaitan's whispers. And the tawaf round the Kaaba is not just movement, it is life itself, revolving around the oneness of Allah. These are not myths, nor are they symbolic illusions. They are truths, rooted in revelation, authenticated by science and brought to life every year by millions who answer that eternal call made by Prophet Ibrahim. The Hajj is not just a personal obligation, it is a universal proclamation. It reminds us that Islam is the continuation of the original monotheistic message, and that the rituals we perform today are the same ones established by Allah through His chosen prophets thousands of years ago. To understand Hajj is to understand Islam's roots, its purity, and its timeless relevance. May Allah accept your intention, your knowledge-seeking efforts, and, if destined for you, your journey to His sacred house. May your steps always follow the path of Ibrahim, in sincerity, faith, and full submission to the will of Allah. May your heart remain firm upon Tawheed, and your actions reflect the legacy of those honored by Allah. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of sacred history. May it benefit you, inspire you, and draw you closer to the truth.